Dissonant in the weeks and months to come. We've been asked to pause for a reality check. We've been warned against offering the people of this nation false hope. But in the unlikely story that is America, there has never been anything false about hope. Written into the founding documents that declared the destiny of the nation. Yes, we did. It was whispered by slaves and abolitionists as they blazed the trail towards freedom through the darkest of nights. Sung by immigrants, they struck out from distant shores and pioneers who pushed westward against an unforgiving wilderness. Yes, we did. It was the call of workers who organized, women who reached for the ballot, the president who chose the moon as our new frontier, and a king who took us to the mountaintop and pointed the way to the promised land. Yes, we can to justice and equality. Yes, we can to opportunity and prosperity. Yes, we can heal this nation. Yes, we can prepare this world. Yes, we can. As you say. 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 As you say.
Durante siglos, las profecías de Nostradamus han sido parte de los registros históricos. Si bien son altamente especulativas y controversiales, el legado de su autor perdura. En el año 1503, un hombre común y corriente con un destino extraordinario nace en un pequeño pueblo al sur de Francia. Hoy en día, más de 500 años más tarde, el nombre de Nostradamus es venerado por miles de personas en todo el mundo como un profeta sin precedentes, uno que predice el futuro con asombrosa exactitud. Incluso los escépticos sienten intriga ante el absoluto misterio de sus poderes.
Firefighters described two events consistent with a controlled demolition: bright flashes from inside the building and a number of crackling sounds before the buildings collapsed. What does science have to say about the collapses? The collapse of the World Trade Center was picked up by Columbia University's observatory in Palisades, New York. The South Tower registered as a 2.1 earthquake. The North Tower registered as a 2.3 earthquake. Won Young Kim told Chris Bolin that their seismographs pick up underground explosions from a quarry 20 miles away. These blasts are caused by 80,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate and cause local earthquakes between magnitude 1 and 2. The 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center did not even register because it was not coupled to the ground. During the collapse, most of the energy of the falling debris was absorbed by the towers and the neighboring structures, converting them into rubble and dust or causing other damage, but not causing significant ground shaking. Mark Loiseau, the president of Controlled Demolition Incorporated, told the American Free Press that in the basements of the World Trade Center, where 47 central support columns connected to the bedrock, hot spots of literally molten steel were discovered more than a month after September 11th. These incredibly hot areas were found at the bottoms of the elevator shafts, down 7 basement levels. The molten steel was found 3, 4, and 5 weeks later when the rubble was being removed. He said that molten steel was also found at World Trade Center 7. The highest temperature was in the east corner of the South Tower, where a temperature of 1,377 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded. The molten steel in the basement was more than double that temperature. Do you still think the jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? In all the videos of the collapses, explosions can be seen bursting from the building 20 to 30 stories below the demolition wave. Etienne Sauret was filming her documentary, World Trade Center, the first 24 hours, and caught both collapses on tape. Watch carefully. The tripod shakes 12 seconds before the North Tower begins collapsing. And something is knocked off the right-hand side of the building. You're probably asking, if there were bombs in the building, how would they get in there without anyone noticing? Ben Fountain, a financial analyst who worked in the World Trade Center, told People magazine that in the weeks before 9/11, there were a number of unannounced and unusual drills where sections of both the Twin Towers and Building 7 were evacuated for security reasons. Daria Cord, a guard in the North Tower, told Newsday that security detail was working 12-hour shifts for 2 weeks before 9/11, but on Thursday the 6th, bomb-sniffing dogs were abruptly removed from the building. So who authorized all this? President Bush's brother, Marvin, was board of directors at Securicom from 1993 until fiscal year 2000. Securicom, now known as Stratasec, is an electronic security company backed by Kuwait American Corporation, which provided security for United Airlines, Dulles International Airport, and from the early 1990s up to the day of 9/11, the World Trade Center. Marvin is also the former director at HCC Insurance Holdings, which insured parts of the World Trade Center on 9/11. More information on this was supposed to be disclosed and never was. To date, the SEC has not revealed what they have learned. If only we could examine the debris from the World Trade Center and figure out what happened. Unfortunately, Mayor Giuliani began shipping the remains off to recycling yards overseas before investigators could even examine it. Not even FEMA was allowed into Ground Zero. Essentially, they blocked off a crime scene and destroyed all the evidence. Guess who was allowed into the site? Controlled Demolition, who was also responsible for cleaning up after the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. It gets better than that. On July 15, 2001, Controlled Demolition destroyed two 400-foot-tall fuel reserve tanks from the World War II era. The demolition was conducted for no apparent reason and drew numerous complaints from the neighborhood. The site remains vacant to this day, and a reason for the demolition has never been disclosed. Regardless, I think what happened to the World Trade Center is simple enough. It was brought down in a carefully planned, controlled demolition. It was a psychological attack on the American people, and it was pulled off with military precision.
Come out of nowhere and just scream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense. Mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense. And then I witnessed both towers collapse due to structural failure. One first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense. Come out of nowhere and just scream right into the side of the Twin Tower, exploding through the other side. And then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
Based on what you know, and I recognize we're dealing with so few facts, is it possible that just a plane crash could have collapsed these buildings, or would it have required the sort of prior positioning of other explosives in the building? What do you think?
No, my sense is that just one, the velocity of the plane and the fact that you have a plane filled with fuel hitting that building that burned, the velocity of the plane certainly had an impact on the structure itself. And then the fact that it burned and you had that intense heat probably weakened the structure as well. And I think it was simply the planes hitting the buildings and causing the collapse. my sense is that just one, the velocity of the plane and the fact that you have a plane filled with fuel hitting that building that burned, and you had that intense heat probably weakened the structure as well. As you can see, the impact on the rescue workers, I mean, these people who are heroes in this building that have been impacted by this, the number of people that have been injured, the number of police and fire officers, firefighters that have been injured is just, it's incalculable at this point.
Is it possible that just a plane crash could have collapsed these buildings, or would it have required the sort of prior positioning of other explosives in the building? What do you think?
No, my sense is that the fact that you have a plane filled with fuel that burned, the velocity of the plane certainly had an impact on the structure itself.
What perspective can you give us? I mean, there have been these repeated reports that, well, yes, Osama bin Laden, but some think he's been overemphasized as responsible for these kinds of events. I know many intelligence people at very high levels who say, listen, you can't have these kinds of attacks without having some state, Iraq, Iran, Libya, Syria, somebody involved. Put that into perspective for us.
Well, I'm not sure I agree that this is necessarily state-sponsored. It, as I mentioned earlier, certainly has the fingerprints of somebody like bin Laden.
You served as the commissioner for Mayor Giuliani's Office of Emergency Management.
He is always poised to strike again. Immensely wealthy man and a very private man. He has been granted a safe haven by Afghanistan's ruling Taliban movement. And during his time in hiding, he has called for a holy war against the United States, and specifically for the killing of Americans and Jews. He is reported to be able to rally anywhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 fighters for his terrorist cause. He is suspected of helping set up an Islamic training center, in fact several of them, to prepare soldiers to fight in all parts of the world, in particular against the United States. He is always poised to strike again. Immensely wealthy man. And during his time in hiding, he has called for a holy war against the United States, and specifically for the killing of Americans and Jews. He is reported to be able to rally anywhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 fighters for his terrorist cause. He is suspected of helping set up an Islamic training center, in fact several of them, to prepare soldiers to fight in all parts of the world, in particular against the United States. He is very elusive, moving from mud huts and tent cities and caves at least 3 times a week, taking other precautions. The U.S. Tried at one point in time with satellite surveillance to launch an attack on one of his camps, hoping he was there. It turned out he was not.
and then I witnessed both towers collapse, one first and then the second, mostly due to structural failure because the fire was just too intense.
That just one, the velocity of the plane and the fact that you have a plane filled with fuel hitting that building that burned, and you had that intense heat probably weakened the structure as well. And I think it was simply the planes hitting the buildings.
He's poised to strike again. Immensely wealthy man and a very private man. He has been granted a safe haven by Afghanistan's ruling Taliban movement. And during his time in hiding, he has called for a holy war against the United States and specifically for the killing of Americans and Jews.
Thank you.